right, so all indications I can see is that we're now streaming live. So I am going ahead and calling this meeting of the Lawrence Alliance for Education budget hearing to order. And just as a reminder, in accordance with the governor's executive order to COVID issued March of last year, this meeting is being held remotely. All board members and district staff who may be participating are doing so remotely. We are live streaming the meeting in real time, for the public to be able to access the meeting. Any and all votes that are held in this type of virtual setting will be done by roll call vote. So as we begin, I please ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. So this is the first of two budget hearings. So we have tonight's budget hearing, and we have another one on April 7th at 5:30 p.m. And again, the purpose of this budget hearing is to be able to talk about sort of at a high level and then going into detail the budget for the district, sort of bigger picture, but then also looking at and answering questions around individual cost drivers, cost centers, things like that. So I will hand it over at this time to Superintendent Paris and her team, who are going to take us through for the presentation.
Thank you. Great. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that my two colleagues on the call are introduced. I'll let them introduce themselves. To my right-hand side on the box, there's Irene. Go ahead, Irene.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm the new budget analyst and very happy to be working in Lawrence. And compared to the little town I lived in and the even smaller town that I worked in before, this is quite the place. Great place.
Welcome, Irene.
And to my bottom right, Simone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Simone Wright, and I am a doctoral candidate at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, also working to pursue my superintendent license, and have had the pleasure of working with Cynthia and the leadership team this year to learn a lot of the amazing things happening at LPS.
Great, thank you both. So tonight, as Ventura has indicated, we want to share with you highlights of the FY 21-22 budget. And I'll start by emphasizing and thanking you all for participating in this process, specifically joining us for the school planning meetings. The budget process started in the early winter with the design and approval of the budget goals, followed and in combination with the district goals. We followed that with very detailed school planning meetings. Our schools were asked, as you know, to design goals that were in alignment and matched the district priorities. And then we helped them craft those goals and align them to their resources. Tonight, we want to share with you where additional resources have gone in support of those 4 goals. And then we're happy to entertain any questions that you might have that might be specific of interest or wonder about the budget book. So I'm going to have Maciel show you a very quick presentation, and that will give you the details and highlights of where resources are going in the next year.
Hi, everyone. Just getting my presentation up here, and I will share my screen. So first, I'll begin by giving you an overview of the timeline. We've met with all of you and collaborated to develop our priorities, our district priorities, which were guiding us in our goals and how we designated additional funding that we received today. We've already given access to everyone to my budget file, of course. And of course, as you know from participating in our meetings, we've met with all of our district leaders already and discussed all of their goals and budgets. We're currently in the first of 2 budget hearings, which will be followed by a vote to approve our budget by the LAE board, and then subsequently a vote by City Council to then approve our budget as well. This is a summary in comparison to last year of our budget. I do want to note that this number is different to last year. Last year was quite the dynamic year. When we started off our budgeting process anticipating SOA money and finalized our budget process discussing potential cuts, and then ultimately ended up with the budget you see in front of you today, which was the final budget from the state that was approved by the governor. So in comparison to what we received last year, we have an increase in Chapter 70 aid of about $13.7 million. Our net school spending for the next school year will be approximately $232.8 million. And with including the city costs that we anticipate receiving, which include a $4,000 increase in transportation and all other items remaining the same, our total budget should be approximately $212.4 million for the next school year, which is an increase over last year or this year of about $11.1 million. Here we have our district priorities. The first is student achievement. The second, student support. The third, grow a culturally responsive workforce. And lastly, deepen family and student partnerships. Our first priority that we're going to show you where additional resources went to is student achievement. We added 14.0 FTEs, and that looks like 6.0 FTEs in EL teachers, 2 instructional coaches, 4 FTEs in integrated studies teachers, 2.0 FTEs reading specialists. Additionally, we will be supporting district-wide curriculum and digital resources, and a little flavor for what that looks like is support with K-5 literacy curriculum, CKLA 2.0, as well as K-8 Eureka Math, adoption of the history and social sciences curriculum in grades K-8, and support of some digital resources like Nearpod, Padlet, and Freckle. And also it includes some professional development, partnering with school team networks for high quality professional learning, consultants to support new teachers and mentoring, as well as a science network for instructional excellence. Our second priority is student support, and additional funding was allocated as follows. There was 28.0 FTEs added in groupings of 16 FTEs in SPED, 7 adjustment counselors, 4 one-to-one paras, and 1 FTE LPN nurse. Professional development also added in Wilson language certification for 30 teachers and co-teaching seminars with Dr. Marilyn Friend. We also have an expanded summer school program for the summer coming up in hopes to be able to address some of the wonderful complications this year gave us. District priority 3, to grow a cultural and responsive workforce. And our support in this initiative looks like tuition reimbursement for para to teacher program, contracting with TNTP to assist with recruiting, onboarding, and adopting retention strategies, as well as engagement with Black Print to conduct an equity audit. And lastly, our final priority is deepen family and student partnerships. And support of this district priority in our budget looks like a 1.0 FTE in family engagement for the EL department, as well as Lionbridge phone interpretation services. Back to School Helpline is back again this year. And we will also be participating or hosting the ELFIS program, which is a parent education program. And we will be hosting also Play to Learn workshops. And we will continue, or I believe continue to contract with Frontline to support translation services for our IEPs. And that would be it. I open it up to questions.
Thanks, Maciel. I'll add that these are highlights of the many and multiple resources that we've added in support of these goals. We thought that tonight we would give you some of the highlights. Of course, there may be nuances to this, and they are spread throughout all of our schools across the grades. So this is not the entirety of it. That is where the budget book lies, and where you will see the minutia and all of the detailed of every single school. A reminder that our schools have budget autonomy. So things that you might wonder about, we're happy to share with you all. But of course, they're using it wisely, and we've given them guidance around using those autonomies.
Okay, so before, you know, and I would just ask board members, you can just go ahead and unmute. It's you know, to ask questions. But, you know, the fact that this is a two sort of step process in the sense that they're two budget hearings, I think the benefit of today is hearing this high level. Many of the board members in this meeting have been involved, as you said, in the school-based meetings, but also it allows board members and also the public, quite frankly, to sort of look at more of the details and then be able to come back at our second budget hearing if there are more very specific questions, you know, around not just the overview, but like specific, you know, aspects of the school-based budgets or anything else. With that, can I just ask, like, where is this, or will this be published, just so the public can have access to it as well?
Yeah, certainly. So this document will be posted on our website as part of the minutes of this meeting.
Great. And so again, just state publicly, as I know we're streaming this live, that the community members can look at that budget, like, you know, in detail. It's the same document we'll be looking at as the LAE. And to remind the public that if you have specific questions, you can submit those to info@lawrenceallianceforeducation.org, and you know, those emails will be reviewed and then submitted to LAE members ahead of the next budget hearing as well. So just want to make sure that folks know that that's available, and we encourage you to you know, review it and send us questions, and we'll make sure that we review them and bring them up as part of the next budget. So with that, let me turn it over to LAE members. I saw Julia unmuted, so I'm going to assume that's got some questions to start, Julia?
Yes, thank you.
Right.
You assumed correctly. I know that this is an overview of the budget. We're not going to probably get into a lot of the details, but I just have a few, and I'm happy to see the items that have been highlighted because they're important to all of us, I think, and to the community as well. I just want a little bit of clarification on a few of the items that were highlighted. One of the questions is, why the increase in transportation?
Sure. So the $4,000 increase in transportation was just due to contractual services. So there isn't, we don't have any true additional services. It's just, it goes up a little bit every year.
Every year, but we should have had a savings this year, I would assume, with.
Yes. to some degree, yes.
Yeah, you know, $4,000, you know, with the number of students we have is not a big number, but I just wanted to hear from you.
Sure.
Tell me, or tell us a little bit about the adjustment counselors.
Yeah, I'll have Mary jump in here, but the adjustment counselors are there support staff. Mary, go ahead, jump in. Support staff that will help our students in the social emotional aspect. And of course, that's a priority for us. We've discussed this before with you all, that this pandemic has caused an incredible amount of stress and trauma and many other big emotions that our students and staff are going to need to support families and students.
Is this a temporary
No,
No,
the-
we're not looking at
Are
it
these going to be-
as a temporary assignment. It's been on all of our minds for the past couple of budget cycles. I will jog all of your memories to go back and think about our SOA plan that we submitted, and we anticipated that it would be funded for the current school year, and then with everything that happened, it was pushed off a little bit. But as part of that plan, we recognize that, you know, the ability to have our students supported was critically important. And you know, then Mayor Dan Rivera even asked us to do an analysis by school of our enrollment versus how many school adjustment counselors we had. And we looked across that and we came up with, you know, sort of an allocation of what we thought would be appropriate. And to be very honest, if the funding does come through, we want to add 21 positions across the district. They're very much needed. And so these positions that were added here with our local budget are the most necessary. A couple of our schools, elementary and middle, and then several for the campus, for the high school students, where mental health and social emotional needs are very, very important. So that's why they're there. But know that we're looking to enhance that even further.
So how many counselors will we have with these 7 positions?
So the total number of counselors right now is about 60 across all of the schools.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, you know, we're going to add the 7 and then eventually, you know, the additional ones to get us closer to the addition of 21, which is what is in our SOA plan.
All right. The other item is equity audits. How will that work?
Sure. So we are committed to being an anti-racist district, and we have a committee, we call them ARC, the Anti-Racist Committee, who have been doing an analysis of what that means. And so part of the recommendation and one of the initial steps to doing that kind of work is doing a district-wide audit. So we're contracting with Blackprint, and they're going to do a comprehensive audit of all of our policies and practices, of all of the things in terms of how we run procedures and what we do with parents and students and teachers and community members to ensure that we are practicing the values, that we are an anti-racist district. And so when that work commences, they will also be interviewing you all as part of our community members. And then we'll have a comprehensive report and sharing that with you all and the rest of our stakeholders.
And based on what you're just telling us, Blackprint is an organization that specializes in these types of surveys, if you want to call them that. How long of a process will this be?
Sure. So I'll have Maricel jump in here, who is part of the committee, and she can expand on that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Julian, LAE board members. Blackprint will commence this work hopefully by mid-April, and that will last at least till August in reviewing, and they should give us a report in September that would outline what would be the recommended next steps for the district in order to continue our goal of being an anti-racist school district. And that would include policies, procedures, professional development, resources, access, timelines, and so forth.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And my last question is about the parent education program. Is there anything new that we're going to incorporate here? I know that you've done some of this in the past.
Sure. So we continue to expand that. In the LFIS is where you saw that again highlighted there. That's a very effective program. As you know, that is a program that really supports engagement with parents by helping them understand, you know, everything from what are the good questions that you ask when you're meeting with your teacher to understanding how do you get your student to college. And then, of course, we've added some other professional development and training opportunities for our families.
All righty. Those are my questions. Thank you. You've addressed them all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So Pat, unmute. Yep, go ahead, Pat.
I don't know, Messiel, if this is the time to ask these questions, but I reviewed most of the schools. Just because I was participating in some of the meetings, and I just wanted to get a better understanding of how things changed. And this is a general question, so I don't belabor it as we go through each school. I noticed in professional services, in some cases, there was that the schools had a negative. Now, is this because some of the costs were transferred to grants? I remember Chris was at the meeting, would say, you know, this is going to be paid by title. So is that why that's showing as a negative?
Yeah, so as you guys know, we have received a considerable amount of grant money through ESSER funds. And so that has allowed us to be able to take on the cost of some of these professional services, Pat. So you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what's happened. I'm pretty sure you heard us tell them a couple of times, please go back and update my budget file based off of what Chris just said. And they have then since repurposed the money for other things. That's why you see a lot of fluctuation going on out of that category and into others.
All right, and just one more, and Mary could probably answer this. In some cases, I did notice a reduction in paras. Would that be paras that are assigned to one-on-one students that have moved to either another building or another part of the complex?
Yeah, the contrary is actually true. We added 4 more one-to-one paras based on the counts that we have currently in IEPs. They're mandated positions, but the positions go with the student. So in the terminal grade, if the student is going to the high school from 8th grade, that para follows. So
okay.
From 5th grade to 6th grade, et cetera. But we're actually adding one-to-one paraprofessionals in this budget.
All right, and one more, and then I'll stop. Do you have at the end of each meeting, you ask for a wish list from the schools. Do you have a list of what was granted, the fairy godmothers granted to each school?
Yeah. Pat, you're going to get us in trouble here because then, you know, the principals are going to be like, they got what over there? Yeah, the answer is yes, of course. You know, we reconciled all of the ask to the best of our ability and what we can afford, but more importantly, that it also was a resource that met their school-based goals and district goals. And so some of those were already highlighted in the buckets that we shared with you. You saw those on there as the big highlights, but we do have an internal document that we've kept track of how many of those additional requests were granted. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Noemi, I'll turn it over to you if you have any questions.
No, my only question was about also transportation, and it was already answered, so thank you.
Great. By the way, I have a kid taking a shower who really likes loud music, so you might hear that. I'm just saying. So feel free to bob your head if that's what you need to do. This is good overview, and like I said, I think we can get into more details next meeting. I think one question I have is, you know, in the initial presentation of the FY22 draft budget, there's a slide that has like the Chapter 70 required city contribution, net school spending. It then, you know, takes away the qualifying costs, shows the appropriation, puts back, you know, I don't see that in this actual book in the same way, like in terms of what you presented that gets us to that, you know, 212 million, and, you know, and I just wanted to make sure, like, was that intentional, or I just thought the way you showed it today was like a nice one visual, you know,
Sure.
for folks, and just wanted you to address that.
Sure. So the budget book is actually an all funds budget. So that's why it's hard to correlate back to it. It actually is in there because we do add for you, and I can actually look for the page and let you know exactly the page, but there is a page where you will see the local funding plus the grant funding. And that's the part. So if you go to page 8,
you
will see that there is the general fund broken down by grants. And that's what's going to help you kind of reconcile between the two numbers. But the book itself is not designed to give you the breakdown the way that I just did, because of the fact that it's an all funds budget and it kind of has data on around a lot of other things in there as well.
Yeah. So just help me understand, and maybe for the public too. So if you go back to page 7, because
Sure.
that seems to provide, the net school spending plus the additional transportation, this and that, but it doesn't like pull out the qualifying city costs in that
Correct.
particular table. And again, I just want to make sure, I'm able to explain to folks and articulate why that, why it doesn't show those qualifying costs there. Because I'm seeing a 243 number. Nowhere here am I seeing like a table add up to the 212.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure thing. So yeah, so that number is the required without pulling out. So it's not the net number.
Got
It does not have the qualifying costs from the city, which is something I can update for the final book if that makes it easier without an issue. I can certainly do that.
That would be helpful. Just it's
Absolutely.
easier to tell the narrative. You know what I mean? Like we add
Absolutely.
this and then we take that away, then we put that. So if you don't mind, that's it helps. I think just all of us explain it a little more.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that.
I just have a question, Ventura.
Yep. Please go ahead.
My draft seems to be off. The numbers don't seem to be in a given format, and I don't know whether it has something to do with the way I downloaded it, which I don't think, or is it the way that it is, that everybody has the same draft format?
Julia, I'd be willing to work with you to take a look and see, because we sent it purposefully as a PDF to avoid having any type of formatting issues. So it should have definitely downloaded in one format for everyone uniformly. So if you'd like, I can send you the PDF version and maybe I can address that with you offline, because I'm not sure why there would be any differences in layout.
To be offline, off of, it doesn't have a format per se. So if you could resend it to me.
Absolutely.
Look at it and then I can give you a call probably over the weekend or something.
Absolutely.
I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And just a few more questions. So, and again, just trying to clarify, and part of it's for the benefit of the public as well. The positions that were shown earlier in the overview slides at the beginning, so all of those positions are being funded through the, sort of, again, the formula of the draft budget, that 212 million. I guess the question is, you show in the budget book, and as you've talked about here, the grant funding, that's come in. And just help us understand, like, in addition to those positions and everything that you've shown us, today, what we're saying that there are additional things that are funded by that grant funding, or does that grant funding include paying for the addition of, what looks like 50 plus new, FTEs?
Sure. So we were actually able to carry additional FTEs on our local funding. We did not add FTEs on grant funding. We typically do not. We did make the exception this year of allowing for a 2-year span due to ESSER, adding a BBE per school if they were able to hire someone. But it was with a very clear caveat that it would be for 2 years and 2 years only. But we typically stay away from adding FTEs with such temporary funding. As you can imagine, we try to be conservative with adding FTEs. So those 53 FTEs were added, and they were added based off local and the increase, the $11 million increase I referenced earlier.
Great. And so then what is being paid for, just to make it explicit, by the federal funding? Or not even the federal funding, sorry, grant funding, of which federal we know is the one that has the most attention right now because of the amounts.
Of course. So I can tell you where most of our ESSER 1 money has gone towards, because we're currently working on budgeting ESSER 2. But ESSER 1 mostly went towards providing additional supplies, which were increased tremendously this year with having to mail out supplies to students' homes and having to have a lot of pickup coming into schools to pick up supplies. Consumables increased quite a bit also because a lot of copies had to be made. The dynamic of this year was very different, which allowed for very different expenses than normally happen. So it was basically all geared towards being able to do that. The online digital resources that we had to offer were expenses that were completely new to the district. So a lot of the funding went towards that as well. And then we tried our best, to keep up with PPE orders and obviously a lot of custodial overtime, safety overtime in terms of hours and just our time with the district. And Cynthia, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add to that, but there was a significant amount of overtime. That much I can absolutely tell you.
Yeah.
Again, the overtime was necessary for custodians. As you know, they've done an enormous amount of work to keep our building safe and healthy. And Maciel is right, the additional PPE, the additional consumables, just things that we had not experienced and needed during the pandemic, that's where all the funding was allocated towards.
Oh, and I might add also, Ventura, there was a significant amount of budgeting towards technical support, so laptops,
Sure.
Chromebooks, of course.
Yep. No, great. I appreciate that. And then also then, I've heard you say that, and again, for folks, like we got this federal round of funding, ESSER 1, that really supported this year. We have the second round now, ESSER 2. And so just confirming, I heard correctly, so the district is currently planning on how those funds will be expended with the assumption, and make sure that some of these things like overtime, consumables, PPEs are probably not a part of our core budget, but we know we have that funding.
Right.
Not should we need it, when we need it to support the operation into next year. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that would be helpful, at some point, if you all, like even what you did with ESSER 1, just a broad overview of what you spent funding on as you all develop, plans, which again, may build on what the needs were this year, but as you build those plans, just to, share them with us, just again, because it adds another part of the budget picture, which are things that we don't typically have to expend funds for, but we're in a situation where we need to, and I'm glad we actually have some additional federal funding, to be able to do that. So I just asked that request. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I think those were my initial questions, and I would invite, again, board members and the public to look deeper into the book. We do have a hearing next week, right? Yeah, so that's next week on the 7th at 5:30. So again, if folks have more specific questions, I encourage people to dig in there.
And I'll sure.
Please.
I'll add that the design of this process, I think, because you all have been so intimately involved throughout, really allows for us to build this budget book and then highlight and shine some of the big things that we're really excited about. And if you have additional questions when you go back to the budget book in the next week to review, feel free to give us a quick email or a call, and we're happy to answer any additional questions when we meet again in the following week, in hopes that when we do review, that we get a favorable vote.
Great, thank you. And I do have just one more general question, if you don't mind. So, in addition to the 53 FTEs that, we've established are in the core budget, not grant funded, can you talk a little bit about just from FY21 to FY22, just to maintain even before those 53 employees, just to maintain increases in, agreed upon increases in salary, health, this and that, what roughly is, the percentage increase that we would need to do just to even maintain level service, before adding the 53 FTEs?
Sure. So that typically looks like around anywhere from 3 to 5%. I'd have to really do a little bit more digging to be able to give you the exact percentage, but it's roughly around that to be able to incorporate and just manage. I don't know if you recall last year when we did receive SOA increase, they actually allowed us to take, if I'm not mistaken, it was 5% of SOA money to put aside towards contractual obligations, because they know that for a district like us, it's very important to be able to still continue with at least a small increase to be able to truly be level funded. So it would be anywhere between 3 to 5% for sure to be able to remain at just contractual obligations, nothing extra, everything level funded.
Yeah, that's approximately $5 million.
Yep.
We're make that 3 to 5%. And as you know, 80% of our budget is
Right.
on salaries and benefits, contractual obligations, 80% of it.
Yep. And I think that's just important context as we're looking at, you know, like a variance of $11 million, right? In the positive, like that's great. But I think, you know, just like you're saying, like, assuming everything stays the same, that's already, you know, Cynthia, what did you say? Yeah, half. I mean, $5 million is just to meet contractual obligations. So it sounds like the majority of additional of that variance is then to support the staff, you know, the new positions in the very targeted areas that, you know, the district and the board have identified as priorities for next year.
Yes, that is correct. So your assumption is correct, Ventura. We talk about an $11 million increase, but you're right. In order for us to add, we didn't have 11 per se.
Right,
in order to add, we had the difference between our contractual obligations, which are approximately $5 million, and then we were able to do some of the additional fun stuff we were able to share with you.
Yep. And then, sorry, one more question. You included information in here, which I appreciate, around enrollment, you know, and just wondering if you could share what guidance, if any, have you gotten from either DESE or, you know, if there's anything legislature in terms of the budget process or anything. We've seen across the state a decrease in student enrollment. So it's not just Lawrence, it's, you know, something we've seen across the state, but budgets are built on, you know, enrollment. And so just wondering if you've gotten any guidance or updated information around what will it mean for us, but really, again, it's a statewide issue when it comes to budgeting and just student enrollment.
Yeah, I think what the number that we have is in keeping with what we had the year prior. And of course, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. We don't know until the students actually show up. We're in the middle of starting enrollment for our youngest learners. And as you know, we have quite a bit of families who normally in the winter months would come to us. That did not happen because of the pandemic. So we can't fully anticipate that, but we of course will be welcoming them and planning for those additional students that we anticipate will also arrive later this year.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I promise that I'll pause there. And again, like I invite, and I probably will have, you know, as we dig deeper into the book, like other questions, but I appreciate that, you know, sort of the higher level framing the questions that board members have asked, you know, as well. So great. Sorry. So Superintendent Maciel, anything else to add at this point?
Not at this time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So just before I ask for a motion to adjourn, again, I just want to remind the public that the budget book will be posted on the district website, and we invite and encourage you know, people to review it in detail. You can email questions, info@lawrenceallianceforeducation.org. We will review the emails and make sure board members get them, and, you know, we can pose questions during the meeting. The final thing I'll say is, would be remiss, you know, we got a big date coming up next week, you know, beginning of the week. So just want to take, you know, another opportunity to thank the superintendent and her team, all of the teachers, all of the staff that I know have been working tirelessly all year. But as we know, this is now another transition, you know, in a year of a lot of transitions. So everything you're doing to get ready for, you know, welcoming a larger number of students back next week is much appreciated. And, you know, we really look forward to hearing how it goes. I know that next week's meeting is about budget, but I'm sure people want to know, you know, how it goes as well. So just thank you, and thank you for everyone for your work. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. I will do a roll call vote. Noemi?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we are now adjourned. Thank you very much, and we'll see
Thank
you
you.
next week.
Yep.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Bye, everybody.